this is not cool. Like, these guys are out serving every day, protecting us, putting their lives on the line. And yeah, in any profession you have, there's going to be a few bad apples. There's not very many in the police department, I can tell you, but there are some. But why are we sitting there berating and attacking the police?
Joe, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me on today.
Thank you for coming, sir. I appreciate it. You and I got connected because Chief Bester Shia from Meridian PD was like, hey, you got to meet this guy, Joe. He started this foundation, Back the Blue. He really supports law enforcement, and I'm very interested in that myself. Obviously, really trying to my end, I obviously don't do what you do, but I try to facilitate communication and building community from law enforcement in the surrounding areas. But you do something far more substantial. And when I found out about it, I'm like, I can't even hang out with this guy because it's so much cooler. It's so much cooler than what I do. But if you wouldn't mind, please take your time. We have as much time as we need, but walk me through how you got the Back the Blue Foundation started, what the initial impetus was, and the whole bit. Go for it.
Sure. Yeah, so it really started with a mindset shift for me. I had gone through a lock-in leadership class called Like It Matters, which helped you focus in on what are the fears that are holding you back. And mine was fear of rejection. And so I realized that a lot of the things that God put on my heart or things I wanted to do that I wasn't doing was because I was worried about getting rejected. And so once I was able to kind of identify that fear and give it to the Lord, he opened up a lot of opportunity for me to really have an impact in big ways. And so one of those started out with just praying about Christmas and watching my kids and my family's kids get all these presents, and yet they're not that grateful sometimes. Many times there's more presents than they can even play with, and you're like, what is the point of this? The whole holiday is supposed to be about celebrating Jesus and his birth, and he came to be a servant. And he came to die for others, right? And so, why are we modeling this behavior on a day we're supposed to be celebrating somebody who was a servant of all? And what does it look like to get that back? And so, as I was,
if I may ask, I'm sorry to interrupt. How old were your kids when you kind of started realizing this?
Well, I have 5 kids, and it was probably 8 years ago now. So, one of them wasn't born, but the other 4 were, 1, 3, and then 10 and 12.
Man, it's just right in that hot spot.
Yeah.
Where they're like ripping through presents. I have 3 boys pretty close in age, and they're, we went through this phase too, where it's like they would get a gift and then they'd instantly look at their brother's gift, and
that's right.
You like try to teach them like, okay, there's a learning moment. That's not what you, but yeah, it's like I was so when I first heard that, I was like, yes, I get that 100%.
Yeah. So we're thinking about how do I redeem Christmas, and at the same point in time, you have some of the riots going on with the Rodney King death and some of the other stuff. And I'm like, you know what? This is not cool. Like, these guys are out serving every day, protecting us, putting their lives on the line. And yeah, in any profession you have, there's going to be a few bad apples. There's not very many in the police department, I can tell you, but there are some. But why are we sitting there berating and attacking the police? And so I was like, okay, we need to support the police. I need to redeem Christmas. So I was kind of thinking, praying, and God put this idea on my mind because I did Boise State football tailgates. And I kind of got a little bit of a following for doing that because the food was pretty decent. And we fed about 120 people down there every game, 140 maybe. And a lot of them were off-duty police officers. We just feed them for free because I wanted to tell them appreciate their service. And so I thought, well, maybe we can take the same equipment that we have for the off-site tailgate, because we had 10 by 20 tents and heaters and.
Were you like selling tickets for these tailgates? Like, how did you fund that?
That was just for my business. It was just clients and friends.
God, that's awesome.
It was pretty fun. We'd set up about 4 hours beforehand, and we'd do full course meals. Smoked meat, brisket, Louisiana-style chicken, homemade mac and cheese, all this fun stuff, right? And so I thought, well, what if we did that for the police? And what if we just did it on Christmas Day? And then went down and talked to the chief. He's like, well, that would be awesome because nothing's open on Christmas Day. Sometimes I got to go to the C-store and feed my guys hot dogs. I'm like, man, that sucks. So I'm like, okay, we're changing that. So I said, you know what we're going to do is we're going to plan a Christmas meal for you. You think that would go over all right? He said, oh, yeah. So I gave him my menu, smoked beef brisket, Louisiana style, smoked chicken, cilantro, lime, coconut rice, cranberry gorgonzola, coleslaw.
You guys got any like hot links? Any of those
homemade
like
beans? Yeah, we can do that stuff. So we give him this thing, and he's like, "Man, that would be so sweet. They're gonna love it." So we advertise it, and we do it, and they did like it. They really did. And we did 2 shifts. We did one in the morning and one in the afternoon, evening, because we wanted to be in between their shift changes so they could interact. And what the police chief and I talked about was giving them time to interact with each other on a holiday, what they normally don't get because they're coming in and out and going home, right? So, between the shifts, there's 2 shifts can interact. They don't normally do that. So we kind of pulled back, really, and just let them interact. We didn't want it to be about us. We were just serving, So we got some volunteers and did that. And the next year we did the same thing. And then they invited me to their awards ceremony. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. That'll be fun to see what kind of awards they give out. This is kind of a neat honor, right? Because they probably don't invite most people to this thing. So I get there, and among all their heroic acts of all the things they did, they give me an award for cooking them dinner on Christmas Day. And I thought, oh my goodness, I feel so weird being up on the stage. I'm not a hero. I just cooked a dinner, But what it made me realize, Matt, was they just appreciate people noticing. They appreciate people saying thank you. They appreciate people that go out of their way to be a blessing because they're going out of their way all the time to do that for us. And so it was just neat to watch that, and it left a marker. So we started building that up, and over the last 8 years, we now, this last year, served 430 officers with about 80 volunteers. We served at the departments. We served the Ada County Sheriff's Department with the jail. We served Canyon County Sheriff with the jail, Caldwell, Nampa, Meridian, and Boise PD. And just coordinated all the kits. So you have to have all the meats going out there. So we had meat runners. Some people have drug runners. We had meat runners. Yeah, right. and then we had, all these different kits going out. It was just so fun to watch.
And how many volunteers did this take?
About 60 to 70.
Golly.
So, yeah, actually, now they're starting to pre-plan. There's actually, believe it or not, there's pages of instructions on how to set up a chafing dish and how to do this and that, because not everybody knows all this stuff. And, so I got people smarter than me that helped me out and kind of set all this up. And it's fun. But so that part is great, and it's just building, right? And it's just building that community love back to the police, which is really kind of what we want to do. And so that was what kind of started things for me and gave me the confidence to do something a little outside of the box, maybe stretch me a little bit, right? Being able to kind of trust God with that. And so we've been doing that for 8 years. And then probably about 2001, something else pretty big happened.
Wait, literally 23 years ago?
I mean, no, 2021.
I was like, whoa.
I said the wrong date. 2021. Okay. Something else pretty big happened. And what happened was we had the second set of riots during COVID.
Right.
And that was worse because there was the whole defund the police sentiment going on. There was the president vilifying the police before there was even a trial in some instances because it was against someone that he thought should not be, he just wanted to kind of come out and say something. And so then you had these attacks on police. You had people assassinate police and things like this. It was horrible. And you probably remember all this. And I remember vividly. We went down, we were supposed to all be locked down in NorCal. Mm-hmm. And we went down and my buddy bought like 100 sheets of plywood from Home Depot. We went down and boarded up our jiu-jitsu gym. Nobody had any idea how to handle a saw or a drill. Mm-hmm. So when I say we, I mean I. And then I went down. There was a flower shop down the street as well. I went down and boarded that up. Mm-hmm. Like, it was bonkers. We were like, what is happening here? Because again, where I was living was only, it was a
theoretically a safe place, but it was only about 7 miles away from like Oakland and Berkeley.
Yeah.
And, so as a crow flies, it's really not that far, and it's not that hard to get into.
Well, those are tough areas, right?
Yeah.
And you recently have had the chief of police in Oakland have some problems and issues, and there's a lot of stuff down there going on. But back then, it was massively a problem in our country that we had police being attacked. Everybody knew that wasn't going to work. You had these, free zones they were setting up in Seattle.
Oh my God, CHOP or Chaz or whatever it was. Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? This isn't going to work. Anybody with a brain knows that's not going to work, and it didn't.
Right. And instantaneously they set up like roaming violent gangs to patrol it. They set up a border. Like they had really strong borders like instantly, and then people were getting like there were people murdered in those areas.
There was, and they wouldn't respond to them because it's like there's no police there. We don't have any protection. Right. Or they did, but it was a long time.
All those businesses got destroyed.
Yeah. I mean, I have a friend here in town who now works at our church whose business was destroyed over COVID. I mean, and just positions that they had on COVID, worked in Seattle, and just they kicked them out. And but it's fascinating to watch some of that, right? And you go, what can I do, right? What can I do? And so I was praying at that time. This is about 2001. I had started a project. 2021.
You're good.
I had started a project that God had put on my heart of writing devotionals in the morning. And it was really an accountability project because I wanted to get my mind set right on the good things in life, the truth, and the things that mattered. And what I was finding was if I didn't do my time with God and really center my mind on what he wanted me to be doing that day, I wouldn't be as kind and thoughtful and nice as I could be. And so I started writing my devotionals and sending them to my buddies for accountability, okay? And this started building in my heart a desire to get to know God and what's on his heart. And I started praying longer, and I started thinking about, hey, what is it that matters to God? What is he telling me in the Bible that matters in life? And so I started looking at that. And so I was praying during this time. And what was really on my heart was just how hard it would be to be a persecuted people group like the police were at that time in our country, right? I mean, they really were. No one wanted to go to their job. It wasn't fun. They none of the heroic acts they were doing were getting any media attention, really, right? Very little. It was mostly how bad the police are. So, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. How can people that bad want to help everybody else? That doesn't line up.
Right. I had just to that point, I have a brother-in-law who's been in the Berkeley Police Department for, it's almost 20 years.
That's awesome. Thank him for his service, by the way. From me.
I will. Yeah. I will. And he's a good man. And Berkeley worked extremely hard to make sure that they built community, that they communicated with the city council, that they explained, and because Berkeley's a crazy place, and attempting to keep law and order and keep the law-abiding citizens safe in the midst of chaos is a very, very difficult thing. And they hadn't had an officer-involved shooting in like a decade or something. Like they were the pinnacle of success and successful policing and integration into a crazy community. And when they got defunded, he was like, how? Like, what more do you want from us?
Yes.
Like, what else can we do? Like, the political sentiment of other states has nothing to do with the practical application of law and order and keeping the peace here, which we have been doing. We're not getting defunded because we screwed up. We're getting defunded because some bad thing happened in some other state that was interpreted a specific way, and now we experience the fallout. And it's like, how do you come back from that? What a thing.
So tough. I mean, and I can only imagine on the inside from a police officer's standpoint, you put your life on the line every day. You have the stress and the worry of the job. You're dealing with the criminal element in some areas of your job that can be really tough. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of high tense situations you got to deal with. You're built for that because you trained for that, but it is tough. Your family sacrifices, and then all of a sudden, the rug's pulled out from underneath you. All the support, all the encouragement, all of the hey, thank yous are gone.
Yeah.
And it's like that has to be really, really tough. So I was praying about this and really wrestling with it in my prayers. And I was going, there's something I need to do. And I saw these Back to the Blue events that I think in large part were well-intentioned, but a lot of times they got hijacked by protesters or different things. And I'm like, this isn't helping the police. The police have to go respond to the event that's supposed to be supporting them, right?
I'm off duty. I was just here. And now I mean, God, man.
So I'm sitting there going, okay, wait a second. That's not working. And I'm praying about this. And it was August, the beginning of August. And I had just connected with a guy online that was part of some national groups on police stuff. And anyways, I was just praying. I'm like, what do I do about this? And all of a sudden, God's Spirit puts on my heart that I need to plan a big rally. Now, you got to understand, I'm an insurance broker by trade. I do risk management. I'm outgoing. I'm a sales guy. I've never done event planning other than plan my own tailgate by accident and kind of have some guys come that like to eat, right? Or people. But I mean, none of this I've ever done.
Right.
So when this impression comes onto my mind, I wrestled with God for a week on it. Because I'm like, I don't know if I'm your guy. I don't know if I have the skills. I don't know if this can be done. We're in the middle of COVID. I don't know how this is going to work. And God kept moving on my heart. And finally, towards the end of that week, the main impression I got from the Lord was, I'm all in. That was it. I'm like, okay, well, I think that means that I need to be all in too. So I'm all in. Let's go.
Full send.
Yeah, it's full send. So I'm like, okay. So I called the chief of police at the time, now past chief, Levy. And I said, hey, here's what we want to do. God's put this on my heart. I got the mayor there in Meridian, Idaho. And we sat down. And they looked at me after I told them what I wanted to do. And they said, this sounds pretty crazy, but you did a really good job with the police dinners. So we're going to give you some leash, basically.
You cook a mean brisket. Yeah, full send. That's great. Good thing he didn't try my tri-tip. He'd be like, you do a good tri-tip. Full send. I would have screwed it up.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
So that was in the middle of August, right? And they were on board. And they said, we'd help you. So middle of August, we set up the event at the beginning of October. I think it was like October 4th or 6th. It was a Monday night, okay? The only night I could book the Idaho Center. To book the Idaho Center in COVID, you had to book 12 times as many seats as you needed because of all of the distancing requirements. So I'm signing on a check to book out the whole Idaho Center, basically, which seats like 17,000 people. I'm not going to have that many people there, but I had to rent the whole center. I'm signing on all the audio visual. We're talking about $30,000. I'm signing on checks that I really don't have any business signing on. That's not like I make a massive amount of money, right? I have 5 kids. But God said I'm in. So I said, okay, I'm in. Let's go. So we signed these checks. And from the first day, I would get a call every single day, it seemed like. And I think it was almost true. It was at least 6 out of 7 days with somebody that wanted to help. I'd get a call from Lee. I just moved here from Oregon. Here's $1,000 to help with what you're doing. I like what you're doing. How'd you find out? I don't know. It was just crazy. Lady calls me and says, I want to do your books and your website. Let's meet. Or I want to do your books. And then some other guy says, I'm going to have this guy build your website out of Arizona. Okay, great. And I got a speaker for you. And so we start going on this thing, Matt. And it was just phenomenal to see what God did, because in 6 weeks, we raised $43,000. We rented out the Idaho Center. We had over 1,000 people at the Idaho Center in a big show of force of support for our police officers. And we got speakers from all over the country to come and help us out. One of the speakers we had was a guy named Paul Butler, who is the Master of Ceremonies for the FBI Academy's training graduation day. He's a former chief and sheriff out of South Carolina. And Paul flew out here on a dime to be our Master of Ceremonies. Oh, awesome. Well, Paul and some other guys that he knew a guy named Darren Porcher. Darren Porcher's a Fox News contributor. Darren Porcher's an expert in police tactics, and he was at 9/11 responding, and his partner passed away at 9/11. And he dealt with all the aftermath of what happened at 9/11. He flew out here on a dime to be our keynote. We had Sheriff Donahue who spoke there. We had the governor came, the lieutenant governor came. We had a lot of support. And what was just fascinating to me is that God put this on my heart, not because he wanted me to be the guy that planned the event per se. He just picked me. I might have been some random thing. He probably said, okay, I'm going to pick the guy that has the least skills and not very good, so I get all the credit. No, just joking. But you know, it's like he did it because he wanted to show the police that he really cared about them and that he really loved them in a time when they were getting persecuted. And to me, that shows me the heart of God. And there's a lot of times we question God. We go, hey, why did this happen in my life? Or why did that happen in my life? Or why did he allow this? But there are those times when we see his heart. And I really felt like I saw his heart because he said, hey, Joe, you do something that you've never done before. I'm going to equip you and bring all the people in. And the end result is I'm going to show a bunch of law enforcement that they really matter to me. And I thought, man, what a cool, awesome thing, right? So that was a pretty surreal experience. In my church, you know, we've been talking about spiritual gifts and what does that look like? How do you know what your gifts are spiritually? And there's all these surveys and studies you can do on, well, I'm good at administration and I'm good at this or that, right? But I've always thought, well, people can be good at that whether they're in the church or not, right? What does it mean to have a spiritual gift? And you look in the Bible and you had Philip who teleported to a totally different city and he ran really fast up to the Ethiopian eunuch, right? Who was on a chariot. And then you had Samson who had strength, right? And God gives gifts to people for his purposes. And so I really realized recently that he gave me a spiritual gift to plan that event. That's the only way I can explain it. Because the next year we set up the same event. We had a year to plan it. We had a lot more funding. We set up a whole committee. And we thought, okay, we're going to plan another event, right? And we're going to get 3,000 people out there this time. And so we bought a bunch of T-shirts and hats and everything. And, you know, the intentions were all great. But we had to move it out to Caldwell's on a Friday night. Better night, you know, lots of advertising. We had 500 people show up. And I was so discouraged. And I thought, man, what's going on, God? You know, we have all these people here, these speakers and all these things. And it's like God wanted to tell me that it didn't matter what I thought should happen because he had a better plan. His better plan was this. We had a guy named Brad Childers speak at that event. And Brad Childers had been shot 5 times in the line of duty. Local police officer, wasn't our keynote speaker per se, but was very effective. And he told the story about how do you recover when you've been shot in the line of duty. And it was a fascinating story. And I had all these sponsor tables up front. And at the end of the story, they all told me, man, this is like a management summit. I mean, I wish I could just come here. I just gleaned so much information on how to manage people. But here's the story Brad told us. A summary. He kind of goes through and he says, you know what? When I was shot, it hurt and I had to recover. But the biggest recovery was emotionally. I was angry. I was bitter about the part of life that was taken away from my family and me. And I was upset, right? And this guy took that from me, you know, and my partner. And so we talked about the scene, what happened a little bit. And he talked about that journey of recovery, right? And he said, we got to the day where his arraignment was set. And I'm in the room, and all of a sudden, this little red ball rolls up to me. I picked up this ball. I looked around to see what kid does this ball belong to. And I saw this little girl, so I walked up to her and I said, is this your ball? And she looked at me and took it. And in that moment, I realized, this is what Brad's saying, he said, I realized that was the daughter of the guy who shot me. Pretty powerful. And he said, God put on my heart that she was going to have a pretty tough life too. So fast forward a few years, he's still trying to work through all the anger and resentment, right, of this challenge in life, this violent act, right? The guy dies in jail. He's thinking, okay, all this is going to go away. It doesn't. And God puts on his heart that little girl. So him and his wife announce at our event that they decided to come alongside this little girl. And they've been purchasing equine therapy for her and getting to know her and her grandma. and they're setting up a college foundation in her honor to help raise money for her college scholarships. Matt, what do you do with that? I mean, I was like blown away. And I'm like, that's such a great example of unconditional love. I don't know what else is, you know, and there was not a dry eye in the place. It was unreal. You could hear a pin drop. Everybody was just like, whoa, what just happened here? She's up on stage with this guy. And I'm like, that's unbelievable. And so we get out of this event, and Paul Butler, who's the MC, you know, just a great guy, told this story on his LinkedIn that night and posted on it. Well, he shares with me on Monday that over the weekend, now most people don't look at LinkedIn on their phone over the weekend. You know, they're just doing their own stuff. LinkedIn's kind of a business app, right? Over the weekend, it got 30,000 views, the story. And it went all over the world. And I thought, you know what? That was God's plan. His plan was he wanted to get Brad's story out through our event so that people could understand what it looks like to be a police officer who has a high level of love for his community and the people in it, even the children of the people who harm you.
And what do you do? What do you do after that? I mean, I just hearing the story makes me feel woefully pathetic and undeserving of my time.
It's incredible, isn't it? And you just go, wow. And so, you know, we ended that event a little in the red. But I was like, you know what? I don't care, because God just did something pretty amazing. And so we figured that out. And over time, we figured out that, you know, maybe we didn't have it all dialed on these events. Police officers don't like everyone focused on them. They just rather go about doing their business, right? So we determined, you know, unless there's another need for a rally to really stand up for the police, we're going to put those on hold, and we're going to look at ways to join the police in projects that they get excited about and we can get excited about as a community that add value to the community, because that's what their heart is about, right? They don't like everyone always going, hey, how great you are, all this stuff, and pointing at them. And that's, I think, part of the sentiment that happened with the rallies is we get not as many rank and file there only because of that. And I think the intention was to try to bond the community, but it wasn't working as well. So we kind of did some surveys as a group and said, hey, what else can we do? And so God did something pretty amazing the next year. And we started working on some different projects. We still did the Christmas dinners. But last year, in 2023, so we took a year off. 2023, my sister moved up here from Oakland, kind of your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
My sister's name's Kathy, and she moved up here and works with a group called New Day for Children. And I'd been supporting her ministry here and there financially. Phenomenal ministry. They rescue children who have been victims of sex trafficking. And they don't rescue them, actually. They receive them from those who've rescued them. And they put them in homes that can care for them, that are built and structured with staff to meet all the trauma issues that they have. And as you talk to her and you hear about these children, some of which, you know, she had one child whose mom did experiments on her when she was young, on her upper torso to try to get her to mature quicker so she could be trafficked more. I mean, just sick and wrong stuff, right? And you're like, there is such evil in the world. And you go, wow, who would do that to a kid? And some of the stuff these kids go through. But at the same time, you look at the people that dedicate their lives to helping them and saving them, and you go, they're such good, right? And so I don't be on the side of the good, right? And so, anyways, she's, you know, going out speaking, you know, they have gangs that these kids are trafficked in. They have to move them from states. You know, she's getting different kinds of persecution for being a part of this group, right, a little bit. And she moved up here and retired up here with her husband. And so at my Kiwanis Club, it was right after the movie Sound of Freedom, which most people have watched. It's a great movie on what really happens with child sex trafficking. And anyways, there was a lot of my friends that were talking about this. And I'm like, I know somebody who does this, like helps kids with this, right? Helps in this ministry. And so you need to hear from him. So I invited her as a speaker to my Kiwanis Club. And I invited all my friends and people I knew and stuff. And the room was doubled in size. I think we had like 60 visitors. It was the biggest meeting we've had in like 20 years in Meridian. And she talked about it. And people were just like, man, I want to help. I want to do something. And I thought at that moment, maybe this is the thing that we can do to partner with the police, because the police respond when there's the problem, but it's hard for them on the front end to do the training necessary to keep the problem from happening. And on the back end, where are they going to place them, right? And so when I'm talking with my sister, I'm like, hey, you place them in foster care, but the foster parents don't know how to deal with that level of trauma. It's a higher level of trauma than sex abuse or other kinds of abuse, because they've been commoditized now, right? And they've been commoditized by their cell phones, a lot of times through sextortion, which, of course, in the foster care system, you have to have a cell phone. So now they slip in and out all the time, right? And so as she was talking about this and the need, I just got this on my heart. And I started investigating, well, what would it take to have a home in Idaho? What would it take to have a home that cared for kids that have been victims of sex trafficking, or homes? What would it take to train people and really get the word out? And what's already going on, right? Because I don't want to duplicate efforts. I know there's something going on. So we started investigating that, and we started looking into that. And I built a committee. We met last year and did a brainstorm and came up with some good ideas. But I said, I really want to hear from law enforcement. I want to hear from the other ministries in town, some of these things. And so we kind of finished that up just in the last week. We had our committee meeting last night. We determined that the things that we can bring to the table from Back the Blue, where we have a lot of volunteers, a lot of connections with legislature, with faith-based community churches, and different things, that those are all things we can bring to the table. But we also have a reputation of bringing people together who have different points of view and center and focus things on what really matters. So like with the police, there are people from different political sides of the spectrum, think different things about how the police should be run, all these things. There's, people who may not agree with each other on much, but they all came to our event. Why? Because we kept it about the police, right? And so same thing in this space. There can be all kinds of different opinions on who the victim is and whether people choose to go in this lifestyle or don't, or all these things, right? But when you're talking about children, we all know that children are vulnerable. They're supposed to be raised, and we can all kind of come together and say they should not be abused, right? And so that was something we felt like we could help center on. So we took some surveys of some different folks, and we kind of have come together, and we're going to start training some of our people to be trainers, to be able to go into schools and youth groups and different community areas to start training people on how do you help your children and children around you avoid sextortion and sex trafficking altogether. How do you identify kids who might be victims, right? What are the things that you can identify? And what can you do about helping if you want to help from a counseling or an encouragement standpoint or a services standpoint? So we're starting to build that now. And then we've been connecting with these different police departments to try to check in with them and say, hey, what's your take on this? What do you see? What's the good, the bad, and the ugly? So we don't make mistakes, but we just are helpful, right? And that's been really good. My sisters told me over across the country, there's some really successful programs, really great people. There's also some challenges, because people start things and they want to kind of run it a certain way, and people can get kind of turfy sometimes. And so we're just going to basically try to be a nice support and encouragement to the folks that are involved, and that's going to be the police departments. We've had some help from the Idaho Attorney General's office and some meetings with them. We've met with some people out in Canyon County that have some grants, but we're just going to start with the prevention side. There's some groups out there doing some things for adults. There's not any overnight stay programs that I'm aware of for kids right now in the state of Idaho. Some of that had to do with most likely some of the regulatory laws that were out there. And well-intentioned probably, because there's been some other overnight stay programs with kids probably in the past with abuse. But you have to be able to have some room to be able to help kids, even though there's risk. Because if you do nothing, then it's worse, right? So working with lots of different people, trying to pull together coalition, trying to figure out how do we move the needle? How do we make this a safer place for kids? How do we tell those folks that want to traffic kids not in our backyard? We're not going to put up with that. We got people on the ground. We got systems and processes to figure out how to help train people so they can stay away from you. And when you start doing that kind of stuff, our police, when they come after you, they're going to have places to put these kids. They have places that are safe that you're not going to get to them again, right? And I know they do a lot of that now, but it's just figuring out how do we make that better? How do we move the needle, right? How do we make it easier for police to help kids? How do we make it easier for people in the community to train parents on what the issues are now? We had people, one of the persons in our on our first brainstorm session didn't even know what sextortion was. He has 2 young kids. And I don't blame him. A lot of people don't know what that is. But, basically it's popular now in high schools. Kids are sending around nude pictures of each other. And somebody gets one of those pictures and they extort the kid. There's a kid in Eagle High School that I heard of that parents were pastors. This guy got a hold of her picture, said, I'm going to send this to your whole church unless you do what I say. Send me more pictures. And then she sent her more pictures. And then now you got to date my buddies. And now it moves into I'm trafficking you. And that's how slippery it is. And it can happen at any level, any income status, any nationality. It's hitting kids up and down the spectrum in that way. It's not the old school, hey, we're going to kidnap you, put you on the street, and have a pimp running you. It's a lot different now. And so as we kind of listened to my sister and some of these, we interviewed a program out of the Tri-Cities that just opened up with a home that had been running for 9 years, trying to provide services. Just really trying to find out, hey, what is it? What is it that we need to do? What are the services that are needed? And it was just eye-opening, fascinating to hear what they're doing. But yeah, there's a lot of undereducation, miseducation in this space. And we want to help with that. We want to help on the prevention side to start with, and then we'll see what God leads and how we can be helpful going forward. But a lot of it is trying to figure out what's helpful instead of just kind of go your own road. And then when things aren't working out, you kind of look for who to blame. We're not about that. So it's just, hey, how can we come alongside the police? How can we come alongside law enforcement, some of the services organizations that are doing good things? And how can we be a blessing, right, as a community?
Man, Joe, I have look, this is the second time you and I have met. Mm-hmm. And after the first time, I was like, there's something different about this guy. And, I was really happy that you agreed to come and do this podcast, but I didn't know you did that. I knew about the rallies. I knew about the dinners. I knew about the officer you spoke about. For the last year, I've actually been working with Officer Gomez on mm-hmm. making parent education programs.
So cool.
For sextortion.
Yeah.
Because the thing that to this point, okay, look, we can deal with the fallout of these events, but why are these events happening? And there are a lot of different groups, trying to spearhead things. A lot of people trying to take cell phones out of schools and mm-hmm. and things of that nature. But that's all, in my mind, tangential stuff, because the real core of the problem is why don't we have more tragedies at Costco? Well, because people know Costco is a dangerous place, at least dangerous for a little kid, mm-hmm. right? I have a 7-year-old. I'd never send my 7-year-old into Costco alone for an hour.
No.
Because I know that Costco's, it's not the most dangerous place, but it's dangerous enough. Somebody's going to walk out with him or something terrible, right? So That doesn't mean I never take my 7-year-old to Costco. It means that I take my 7-year-old and I train my 7-year-old how to navigate Costco with me, right? Because I understand that threat arena at a park.
That's right.
Take my kids to a park. I don't say, hey, there are dangerous people in vans at a park, so we're never going to go to a park. It's no. Let me train you. Let me help you understand how to navigate this. Don't take candy from strangers, right? The classic thing. Don't talk to people or leave with anybody. If somebody has a dog, that's fine, but like you don't get close to the dog, and you certainly don't wander over to the dog and all of these things. We as parents know how to teach our kids how to navigate the risk of the world, because we understand the threat arenas that we flow in and out of. And it culminates with like, when they're 16, here, kid, get in this 5,000-pound steel missile filled with explosive liquid and go 75 miles an hour down the freeway. Like, it's the most horrific risk you could ever imagine. I mean, this thing's moving like 100 feet a second, and it's like, a Ford Explorer, But the reason, at least from everything I've learned from working with law enforcement and legislators and parents and educators, it's like, okay, the reason we're in this problem now is because parents have been removed from the primary protector role that we normally occupy. Because parents don't understand the threat arena of the online world. They also engage with technology like a cell phone or a tablet. They engage with that in a far different way than young people engage with it. But because I use my phone in an innocuous manner, I assume it's an innocuous device. And so it's like, oh, here, kid, like, yeah, you can play on my phone while we wait in line. Well, 10 seconds later, the kid's somewhere on my phone that I've never been and never even conceptualized. And like, there are all of these problems that once you realize like, oh, okay, here's the issue. Parents don't understand how dangerous this world is. They understand in the abstract. It's like, okay, there are bad people out there, but they don't understand the practicalities of why or how it's dangerous. And because of that, if you don't understand in a practical sense why a car is dangerous, can you protect your kid from injuring themselves in a car? You can't. So you actually have to train parents on how to keep kids safe, on what they can do to fortify their house, fortify their kids. For instance, here's one that I do with work with parents all the time that I always say. I'm like, look, you get that text message like, hey, Sharon, are you going to pick me up from the airport? Like, I'm really excited to see you. Thanks. And you're like, oh, this isn't Sharon, like wrong. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm flying in. Like, I'm sorry. Have a blessed day. You're so nice. It's like, yeah, no problems. Like, you're a really nice person. Like, I'm sorry. My name's Anna. Like, I'm flying into town. Like, who are you? And of course, it's just a phishing scam. Yeah. Right. Now, this is the impetus for sextortion across the country. Right? Because you have people in Russia, you have people in Africa, you have people everywhere that all they do is they run down this playlist, boom, boom, boom. And instead of deleting these, which is what I used to do, I now save them and I actually run the scam, right? All the way down to like where they're like exchanging photos. And that part I don't, deal with, but I run the scam and save screenshots of it. And my 12-year-old can spot a scam like a mile away because he knows exactly what to look for. It's like poison oak, right? Or whatever. Yeah, exactly. But it's training him because I've taken the time to understand the threat arena. I know what's going to come after my 16-year-old when he turns 16. I know what's out there. And I need him to know that. And if I know it and I can manage his lesser self, because look, let's face it, if I had access to all of these horrible things when I was 16, I guarantee you I'd be a terrible person. Like I would have done all of the things wrong, even though I conceptually knew it. So there's an aspect of education, but then there's also an aspect of, could you fortify your house if you had to?
Setting up barriers, setting up guidelines, and all those things. And you're exactly right. Officer Gomez is a great resource.
He's great.
We had him on our first brainstorm. We're going to re-engage with him as we're moving forward because he's been in this space, and he's someone that gave us a lot of input on what we were trying to do. But it's such a great – I'm glad you're involved in that, Matt, because it's so cool. And, it's – as a parent, you're trying to navigate. I mean, I'm finding out from Officer Gomez or other people, hey, when my kid plays Minecraft – there's people on there trying to entice him to do things. I'm like, well, what the heck? How's that happening? Well, it's the ads and it's the different things. And I'm like, well, wait a second. I got to be careful of this, right? I got to have a conversation with my kid. And people don't know these kind of things.
No.
And if you're not, I'm not a Minecraft player. I mean, I don't play Minecraft. My kid does. I probably should, but I don't. So just being honest, I probably should engage in Minecraft a little more. I watch them sometimes. But, I don't know all of that stuff, right? And so this is the thing. We have to educate. We got to let people know, here's the deal. Here's what's happening. Here's how people are getting entrapped. Here's how people are getting sucked in. And then how do we protect that, right? So,
right. Even with the Minecraft thing, like the thing that happens is you take an innocuous program like Minecraft, okay? Yeah. All people need is they need migration, right? So you need a platform that's innocuous enough that parents will let young people play without observing them. Like Minecraft, it's like you can't send photos, you can't jump on a camera, you can't do anything like that on Minecraft. So it's no big deal, people think. But what individuals do, predators do, is they actually get somebody enticed into an exchange or a relationship just based on text communication on Minecraft, and then they migrate them to a different app. That could be a Bible app, it could be a Fitbit app, it could be, classic social media like Snapchat and stuff. And so it's the migration from the Minecraft that we all think is like, okay, to the risky application. And that's when the sextortion or extortion
like this,
starts.
Right? It's like, hey, I'm going to give you some Minecraft bucks. Right. I really like you. You seem like a cool person.
Right.
Okay, sure. And the next time, hey, how's everything going?
Yeah.
And then they start building a friendship.
Right. And Gomez is really good with articulating different types of hooks. He's like, you could do an emotional hook like my dog just died, or like something sad, or something really positive like I just graduated from 5th grade or 6th grade. And of course it's like some creepy 50-year-old dude. But you have all these different emotional hooks categorized that young people take hook, line, and center. You try one, it doesn't work, you try another. That one works, you run down that line of communication with them, and you just keep, and this is the barrage of the industry that's coming after our children.
So what do? Right? We educate.
Right.
We move them in a direction that's more positive, like you've talked about. I have my kids only on screen days 2 days a week. I want them doing creative things. I want them doing things that build their mind. Right. And then we monitor that, right? And then we kind of talk with them about, hey, this isn't a entitlement. This is a benefit. This is something that we're letting you do. And then it's like, well, what are you putting into their mind, right? And it gets back to kind of what I started with of setting my mind right? Well, how do I help my kids set their mind right? So I have my kids going through and writing their own devotionals now.
God,
and it's not like mine. They're going to have bullet points. They're going to say, here's my 2 observations. And then we read those at the dinner table. Why? Because I want them to think about what matters in life. And most of the stuff you read or you look at on TV and stuff, a lot of it's just fluff. There's not real consequences on a lot of the shows. It's just kind of like a fun entertainment value. But life isn't like that. Life has, benefit. It has challenges. It has excitement. But it has real consequences and real impact, right? And so what does it look like to pull our kids back into that world? I think it's important. Part of it is we have to educate them. We have to invest in them. We have to think about, well, what can I do to protect them, not just from predators like online, but also from the information barrage like you're talking about, because it's potent, right? It's a brainwashing of their minds over time. Right. And we can't allow that to happen. So yeah, it's interesting. So that's kind of what we've been up to. And, I'm super excited about it. It's tough space. And so we can use a lot, we could use a lot of prayer support and a lot of encouragement, because when you're going in to take ground from the enemy doesn't like it. Whoa. Right? And
I have so much to tell you when we're off air. I love what you're so right. Like, if you want to mess in the tech space, especially as it pertains to young kids, there's a $1 trillion industry that doesn't want you in there.
Yeah.
All they want is kids on more screens for more time. That's it. Mm-hmm. They don't care about anything else. The predation on technology is a feature of the app. It's not an accident of the app. They could eliminate it instantly, right? Like you could stop the merging of adults and youth on the internet, on any app, but they're not going to, because the second Instagram does that, it loses market share to Snapchat, because Snapchat won't do that, or, vice versa.
Yeah.
And they don't want people raising the flag, man.
Well, it's interesting because when you're in a battle, there's a certain strategy about how you win the battle, right? And for most of my life, I've been pretty bullheaded, and I try to just kind of do my own thing sometimes. It doesn't work out very well. And God's been putting this on my heart lately, so I'll share it with you. In Ephesians 6, it says that we're supposed to put on the full armor of God. We're not supposed to put on partial armor. So when we get up in the morning, we rush through our time with the Lord, or we rush through our focus time, and we get on with our day, and we're partially armored. Guess what? The enemy is going to attack us on the side we're not armored on, obviously, right? On the things in our heart that aren't protected. But it also says when you're going through the battle, the point is to stand. Well, what does it mean to stand? It means to have a firm foundation on the truth, right? And be able to stand in those battles and be fortified, like you were talking about. So the first thing I'm focused on today is standing well. I'm going to stand well in the current. I'm going to stand well in the trial. I'm going to stand well and put my strength and hope in the Lord. The second thing is being linked. So God made us to be relational beings. We're supposed to be in community. We're not supposed to be solo, lone rangers, right? And so what does it mean to be vulnerable enough and honest enough with some brothers or sisters to link arms and to support each other in the tough times and in the good times? And, I found that at my church, at Rock Harbor, at some other places where I can just link arms with people. And you know what? It's so encouraging because it's like, hey, they're telling me their stories of ways that God's coming through for them in times when I'm having a tough time, and it encourages me, and they're picking me up and my family when we're going through challenging times. And that's what we have to start doing as a community. We can't just be the communities anymore that go to work, come home, park our car in the garage, go watch TV the rest of the night, and let our kids play video games all day and then start over the next day. That doesn't work in life. We weren't built that way. We were built to band together and to be support and encouragement for each other. So the first thing is to stand. The second thing is to link. And the third is to advance. And when we advance in force and we link arms and we say, no, we're not going to allow this in our community. We're not going to allow you to take ground here. That's powerful because it has the power of God behind it when we give him the honor and the glory and the praise, and we're seeking after him with all of our heart. And so that's what you see when you see these movements like Back the Blue Idaho that came out of thin air sometimes, feels like. Where did it come from? It was the Lord, but it was people banding together. It was people saying, you know what, we're not putting up with this anymore. And we can do the same thing with child sex trafficking in our community. We can band together. Yeah, it's going to be hard. Okay, sure. But it's not going to be nearly as hard if we band together and link arms and then go after and take ground versus trying to do it on our own all the time, or trying to say, oh, I'm just going to pretend like this isn't a big, or it's not impacting my family, right? And you get this kind of comment, well, that happens in that state. No, it doesn't. It happens here too. Yeah. And if you don't address it now, it's going to be in your face tomorrow. So might as well get a head start.
God,
right?
Might as well. Yeah, and I shared that. I've had a funny week because I had a friend, before I moved here, I was fighting against a lot of bad policy in schools, and I was trying to, fight the damage that public schools are bringing to the community I moved from. And there are real damages that are happening in California. And I left, and I remember sharing all of these things with my men's group, people that I was very near and dear with. And they were, okay, like, don't kill yourself over this, Matt. Like, it's all right, all this stuff. And I hear from one of them recently, and his kid is going through some hell now in the public school. It's insane. His third grade teacher actually told the entire class, and my buddy and his ex-wife, they were there for their son. She was like, it is your job. This is literally what she said. It is your job to parent, but it is my job to help them identify if they're a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or a boy or a girl.
Oh my goodness.
And he's on the phone with me. That's exactly what she said in front of all the parents. And the room went dead silent. They were like, what? And he called me. He's like, this was your fight. You were going against this. We heard how you were fighting these people. It's like, this is not my fight.
Yeah.
It's like, it is now.
Yeah. You can sit back, and you can only sit back for so long. The fight will come to you.
The fight's going to, that's what I said of like, I was fighting it for you guys, and nobody, it's like they were supportive from a distance. And again, I'm not putting anybody down, but there's no running and hiding. Like, you're going to have to do what you know is right, because enough people go along with what they know is wrong. And we all saw what happened a couple of years ago. Plenty of people went along with what they knew was wrong, but they couldn't say anything because of their job, or they couldn't say anything because of this, they blah, 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 and the world fractured. Like, it was, I mean, the most unbelievable injustices that I could envision being delivered in mass by a governing body in my lifetime. It was like, what?
It's incredible.
It's incredible.
And you know what? It's a lack of courage. And we get courage from the Lord. And I want to compliment you, Matt, because you look at what you did, right? You stood for what was right in a tough time, in a tough state. And then you said, who's with me? And not a bunch of people came, but there's probably a couple, right? And you're still doing that. You're still reaching out to Officer Gomez. You're reaching out to some of the sheriffs and the different people in the community that care. And you're saying, hey, let's start working together. Right. Let's link arms. And then you're going after it, right? And you're going, let's take some ground. And that's what we got to do. And we got great people in Idaho. We got great people around the country. You know, you watch some of these people that are standing up for justice, for liberty. You know, you look at these truckers that struck up and did a strike up in Canada. I mean, it was compelling. Why? Because their rights were getting taken away from them. Right. And so, you know, when people do that, it basically emboldens others. So we just have to keep praying and asking the Lord to keep emboldening people's hearts to stand first, and then to link arms, and we can take a lot of ground together. And I love what you're doing, and count me in on one of the guys that's linking up with you, buddy, because I'd love to do it.
Listen to me. I have so much I want to talk to you about. Joe, first of many, thank you for coming today. Thank you for everything you've done for the law enforcement community and the community at large. I think we got some work to do.
Let's do it, brother.
Can't wait. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.